Okay, well, Ronnie, it's really good to see you again. And that um, what what we have been talking about so far is really, really quite typical, especially as we gain strength. You know, at the Goenka retreats, it's kind of well known by the staff and the volunteers that new students, when they first start to practice, with the only real instruction is to keep watching the breath, and when the mind wanders away from the breath, come back to the breath. Okay, that's really too basic an instruction, because if they were taught, if they do intentionally take long, deep breath and long out breath, they can keep their mind focused on the breath a whole lot more than if a whole lot easier, because they're actively engaged with it, than if they just kind of let the breath be in the background while the mind kind of rolls on. And so what happens with the beginners is that the mind will roll on to the point that it's lost the breath completely. And so Goenka says, never mind, start again. Just keep coming back and starting again, coming back to the breath over and over again. So that in the beginning of the course, the students can do, 4, 5, 6 times a day, they can catch the mind wandering away. Why? Because most of the time it was spent wandering away, but they weren't aware of it. But finally they catch it and they remember. But by day 6, they're getting good at it. Now they can catch the mind wandering away 30, 40, 50 times in an hour. And you know what the response to that is? Oh, it's a monkey mind. Oh, this is such difficult. This is hard work. They're a whole lot better at it at day 6 than they were on day 1.
Yeah.
But they're not recognizing and giving themselves the credit for that. What they're doing instead is coming from the same hindered position, that meditation is hard, that we're no good at it, and that this is a monkey mind and it's just chattering all the time. But the change of view and the change of attitude is needed for this student. And the change of attitude comes about because we can change the viewpoint that we have. And the viewpoint now is, instead of taking the point of view that the mind wanders away, because it's normally running away. That's what the mind does, has been doing that its whole life. Just like a young pony, or let us call it a teenage horse, is about to go into training.
Yeah.
And part of the training he's going to have is having a rider. He can't just say, "Well, I've been in the pasture all of this time." Okay, and that's basically what we're saying is that I don't like the fact that my untrained mind is out to pasture, because that's been its state all along. But what we're getting good at is the fact that we can call it, and it comes. The mind will come back. When does it come back? When we remember to call it. And so that's what you're getting good at. But now, Ronnie, you're getting good at it just all day long, which means you're catching the mind doing a bunch of crap, literally almost constantly. Every time you think of it, you'll say, "There that stuff is again." And that gives us kind of the feeling that we're getting boxed in or hemmed in by our own emotional state. Where in fact, really what's going on is that you're just becoming aware of it very good. You're seeing it, you're catching it. And that stuff was probably happening, and you probably will reflect and agree on me that that stuff had been happening all along, just not to my understanding now. But it was always there, or it was constantly there, or it constantly came back up. but I wasn't quite as aware of it, or it didn't affect me as much now that I'm paying close attention to it. Would you agree with that? That stuff's always been there, or at least over the years, over the past 5-10 years, it's been there.
It's hard to explain. Before I started meditating, I could get quite easily angered by something that triggers something specific. A small outburst and slowly just anger dissipating. Then I began meditating, and for the first year, almost every emotional reaction, negative reaction, just disappeared. It didn't happen because it didn't feel like it mattered to get angry or annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
But now suddenly there's something triggering anger or frustration so intensely.
Okay. I understand what you're saying. One way of talking about it is, yes, that's what happens. This is one of the ways it happens, is that the students get to that point to where they're getting fairly good at seeing that stuff. And then, for some reason or another, all of a sudden it gets really big again. That could have been partly because you weren't quite as aware that you had gotten into a state of homeostasis, but that anger was still always there. Now that it's coming up, you can see it much more acutely or intensely now. But this is not new anger. It's just old anger that you're experiencing in several different ways.
Well, it's things that didn't used to bother me. Now it kind of like feels like I'm stuck with my back into a corner.
Yes, that fits in with the feeling of being in a box.
Yeah, it's kind of like.
All right. So the first thing that we have to go with is to get you into the state of recognition that this is progress, that this is not falling backwards, but that the example, I think that I've even told you this one before, the example of shaving. That just because we get really good at shaving doesn't mean the hair is going to stop growing.
Yeah.
Just as you get good at seeing the arising anger, doesn't mean that the arising anger is going to stop. What it means is you're just going to get very good at seeing it when it arises, so that as it arises, you can deal with it before it gets big enough. But right now, it's getting big enough where you can see and you don't like it so much. But the change of attitude is to begin to like the fact that you can see this anger. The only way that you're ever going to get a control over it is that if you can see it happening. So if you're seeing it happen a lot right now, that's a good thing. That gives you plenty of opportunity to practice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now we're going someplace. That little change in attitude also has the built into it the quality of you can, in fact, deal with it. Before you called me, you were not in that, let us say, attitude. You were in the attitude of being boxed in with it in a corner, that somehow that the anger was more powerful than you were and had backed you into some kind of a corner or something. All right, that you're being oppressed by your own feelings. I do not know of anyone who does not come saying that. Everybody feels like they are, in fact, victims of their own feelings. But the first thing that we have to do with them is begin to see those feelings directly, which you're doing now, but you haven't quite changed your attitude about it yet. So now we need to make our attitude changes. By darn, I actually want to go out and find that anchor, and I want to catch it, and I want to see it really quick. That I don't want to hide from it or feel pushed around by it. So an example of that would be like just a moment ago, the dog barked.
Yeah.
And the dog barked because she was surprised because it was a member of the house who was coming up the steps. And so the dog barked first and then looked to see who it was. And so it was just one little bark, but meanwhile, Pum, who was coming up, and we knew what the dog was doing, and we laughed that the dog is so stupid. She's so asleep that you can't even see that she barks up out of surprise rather than taking a look at who it actually was. Okay, so that behavior in the dog is exactly the same behavior that we have in the human being. That we wake up a little bit and then we bark before we wake up a little more, which is an instant later. In fact, while she was barking, she recognized. She couldn't even get a full bark out until she saw that was Boom. She didn't know who it was, and so she was doing her dogly duties. Okay. And so, in that regard, imagine that the dog is now actually barking out in the yard. The job that I would have would be to check to see who it is that she's barking at. Do I know them? Do I know the reason why they're here? This just happened yesterday that she just started barking and wouldn't shut up. But this guy was good enough to forget about the dog and pay attention to me because he had something to deliver. So he delivered what he was delivering while the dog was barking. But now my intention is to get the dog to stop barking. So this is a way that we can look at it in our own mind is that we can say to that barking dog or that anger that's arising, you recognize there's no reason for the barking. So down, boy. You can begin to say that to your own anger. There's aha, I see you. And then down, boy. So that aha, I see you is what you're not doing. You're feeling overwhelmed by the anger instead of confronting it directly. Aha, I see you. You actually become part of the anger, almost the way would say it would be overwhelmed. Another way of saying it then is I am angry, which means I am the anger, which means the anger here is actually smothering and on top of me. I am the anger, which means I'm captured by it. All right?
Yeah, that sounds.
But now what we're doing is we're waking up to it because that happens and we can be asleep. People get angry and they don't even know they're angry. You can actually confront them and say, wow, you look really angry and you sound, I'm not angry. No, I'm not. Why do you think I'm angry? I'm not angry at all. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so because anger for most people is first off, it's got a bad rap in our society. Thou shalt not be angry or something like that. Therefore, we don't want to be angry. Therefore, we don't go looking for it. We want to hide it. We want to deny it. But you're already to the point now of saying, oh, no, I'm not going to deny it anymore. But now it's coming up to the point that is actually taking over. And that's the time for that very famous point of, aha, I see you. You know, this is that very famous statement that the Buddha was making while he was under the Bo tree, figuring it all out. This is, in fact, possibly the key phrase to unlock the entire teachings of the Buddha, is that phrase, aha, I see you, Mara. In your case, I see you, anger. I see you, bad feeling. Because when we do that, we kind of disassociate ourselves away from that. Before, when we were angry, when we were in anger, when we were captured and controlled by the anger, we couldn't see it. But now that you can see it, you can recognize that and start to capitalize on it. I see you. Which means now, Ronnie, your higher mind is not the anger. It's not angry. It's not Ronnie who is angry, or it's not you who is angry. It's just a condition of the reptilian brain. That in fact, you do not want to kill this off. This anger is based in fear, and fear has kept you alive many times. It's only when your wisdom gets to the point that your wisdom can protect you directly and completely that you can become completely fearless. But we can practice that on a moment-by-moment basis to become fearless more and more often, knowing that fear will still not be completely eradicated until I can see what's going on through wisdom before it gets dangerous enough for me to actually feel fear. So, back to this point about the fear and the anger, we want to actually keep those things. So we're not trying to destroy it. We don't want to destroy our instinctual level, but we do want to take control of them and manage them and make them pets rather than a monster. Most people, our emotions, our feelings, and our underlying tendencies coming out of emotions are monsters. And that's why we suffer. But you can become the boss of your own mind. How do we do that? With a change of attitude. And that attitude is, I can do this. So when anger comes up, we can say, I see you, anger, but now I am not the anger. The anger is just there. And without you supporting it, it'll probably fall apart. In fact, you can probably see humor in it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, so this is what we're doing in this conversation today is I'm basically giving you permission to have anger come up, but it's not you who is angry. It's just that the anger is there, but you can, because of the human mind has actually got kind of three components to it. And which one is in charge from one time to the next is a matter of timing.
Yeah.
Freud knew about this, and he calls it the ego, the superego, and the id. Eric Berne, his student, changed that to parent, adult, and child. So the parent ego state is that which goes around giving orders, telling you what to do, making your rules, and generally making your own life miserable. Because the child is the one who has to follow the orders of the parent. And often the child is rebelling. I don't want to. I don't want to go on a diet. I don't want to go to work right now. I don't want to do this, that, and the other thing. And so we find ourselves in a state of misery over this dialogue between the parent and the child. All the while, this big, powerful supercomputer brain, this human part of the brain, is our adult. And so when the child feels fear, you can then, with your adult part of your brain, check to see, is there anything dangerous? Or if you feel angry, you can say, is there anything really dangerous here? And when you recognize that there's really no danger, now you're beginning to control your feelings so that you can begin to feel the way that you want to feel. Which is exactly the opposite of what we're practicing with Anapanasati is feeling satisfaction. So bringing yourself back into a state of satisfaction.
Yeah, that's
How do we do that? With that attitude and one's right effort. So one's right effort then is the aha, I see you. Aha, I see you, anger. Aha, I see you, Mara. And then we take a kind of a deep breath, get that frontal cortex going. And the important point for you here is normally it's not going to be in your sitting practice, in your sitting meditation where anger occurs. It's quite possible that it does. But more than likely, your anger is going to occur while you're out and about, when you're in the world.
Probably.
Okay, right. Which means that if there then will be an object of the anger that is present, is right there. So the first job that we have now is to make sure that you do not spread that anger. That it's like being on fire, and if you open your mouth with fiery words, you will set other people on fire. So the first thing that we do is we make sure that we shut them out, like zip it up. Don't talk while we're angry. That we deal directly with the anger by breathing into it, recognizing there's really no reason to be angry.
Well, now, yeah, I know that it's just in the moment. It's quite hard.
Well, let us say no, the feeling of anger is a big feeling. But it doesn't matter how big that feeling is, it's still just a feeling. And that you can come out of it. If you intend to come out of it, you can come out of it, possibly within 30 seconds to a minute. As you get better on it, it's going to be down to 20 seconds, and then down to 10 seconds you can get out of it. Maybe even enough just to count from 1 to 10, taking a deep breath is all it takes to get out of it. Which generally when people are angry, it's not that they're waiting on you to spread their anger at you. It's that they're just continuing to do it. They don't have to wait for a response. An angry guy doesn't really want you to respond one way or the other. He wants you to be angry. And so your job is to not get angry when other people are angry. Now, a possible example of that would be a kid. Let us say a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old kid who is having a tantrum. Generally, when a kid has a tantrum, mom has a tantrum too. And she even may raise her hand in the air in the motion of, I'm going to strike you if you don't shut up. But now the kid is going to bawl twice as loud because, one, he wasn't getting what he wanted and was angry, and now he's got real fear of mom slapping the heck out of him. And so kids don't shut up when you threaten them to shut up. But if you're standing by, your thing is, I'm not going to get angry. I'm not going to get in between mom and the child and tell the kid to shut up myself because I'm angry too. No, we can wait until our anger disappears, and then we can get mom to smile. And if we can get mom to smile, generally the way that it works with me is that when mom refuses to smile, the kid will start to smile anyway. So we can break it up, but we can only break up that argument when we're not in it.
Yeah, that's true.
You have to get out of the argument in order to break it up. If you're in the argument, then you're just part of the problem. You have to get all the way out of it, even if the argument is contained within your own mind. But most of the time, your anger is going to be in a situation where someone is doing something that you don't like. And that one of the primary ways to get us angry is for someone to express anger in front of us. This is instinctual. It's called sympathetic vibrations, but it happens with emotions. It's very, very deeply buried, and it goes all the way back beyond where you would think, down to even fish, school. Why do fish go into school? You know what I mean by a school of fish? It's where all the fish of that particular variety are all doing together.
Yeah.
A herd. The same thing with fish, with birds. You also see it a lot with mammals, that this is what we call the nesting instinct, which means that we go into sympathetic vibration with someone when they feel something. It's instinctual. It goes very deep inside of us, so that if somebody's in a state of grief, then everybody around them is in a state of grief. When somebody is startled and gets afraid, everybody gets spooked a little bit. When you have a whole bunch of people who are all very much afraid of the town monster, like a Frankenstein, and one guy gets finally pissed off and angry, he's going to get that whole crowd worked up into a mob. So that now they're angry. When they were afraid, they couldn't deal with it. But now that they're angry, they'll go deal with their Frankenstein's monster. This is a novel by Shelley in
Yeah.
1890s, okay? That's exactly what happened in the movie. It's exactly what happens in real life, is that we we kind of go with the flow of whatever feelings there are going on, which means that you can begin to change the way a group of people feel if you want to. If you feel good and they all feel bad, that's their normal state. But if you feel good and laugh and joke with them, you can get them out of that easily enough. This is what's called mudita, is the Pali word for it. It means sympathetic, but it means sympathetic joy in the way it's translated. But basically, it just means sympathetic, that we are in sympathy or in harmony with others. Just like you lay a violin on that's properly tuned, you lay it down in the room, and then some guy comes in with a trumpet and plays the note A. He walks back out of the room, and you can still see that violin's A string vibrating. That's the sympathetic vibration, happens right across the room. Humans do that. In fact, humans are so good at it that we can do it even long distance on the telephone or Skype.
Yeah, I've read about it.
Okay, that if
We
in
have
fact
some.
you'll look over what's happened since we first started this call, and you'll recognize that you too are no longer in the state that you were when you first called. That I have manipulated you knowingly to get you out of that state just so that I could mention this as being true. Which means that much of the time that you get angry is because somebody's dumped anger on you, and you're merely in the habit of responding to anger with anger.
It's mirror neurons.
Exactly, a mirrored response, precisely. But now you're beginning also to understand, wait a minute, you can feel the way you want to feel. You do not have to feel the way that your programming has set you up to feel. You do not have to go along with the old patterns. Now that you're waking up to anger, you can begin to control it.
Yeah, I have noticed that a lot with my son. He's 4 years in a few months, and not too long ago when he was making trouble and screaming and such, it could be quite irritating. But now I could sit and watch on him screaming all day with almost with joy.
All right. Well, that's the way that you want to start dealing with him, is that you can uh how to say it. He can scream make a particular sound. You can make that sound back, but add a little joy for it. That my
Yeah,
daughter does. She squeals sometimes. And it doesn't even matter what mood she's in because I don't even know what, but when she squeals or makes a sound like that, I often will repeat that sound, making sure that there's just enough joking in it that it's funny. Like she will say, ah, and I'll say, ah.
Yeah,
So these are things that you can do. You become playful when they're letting their feelings be known. You have already gotten to the point that you're in control of your feelings. So now your response is going to be out of compassion, out of joy, out of your higher mind.
yeah, it's exactly.
But you got to get yourself into that state first. How do we get ourselves in that state? Well, we've been practicing all of these months. Never mind, start again, come back, throw Myra out, throw the thoughts of anger out, and eventually you'll be able to throw the feelings of anger out with taking deep breaths, knowing that you do not have to do what the anger tells you to do. You could do what you want to do instead. That the anger is not your boss. You are not in the box. The box is merely just a mental state, and that mental state is a state of being overwhelmed or feeling oppressed. And here's the thing. Remember, I was talking about that when we get really good at shaving and the beard comes back, the natural tendency for the advanced student is to get angry. Why? The answer is because I thought I had already gotten to this. I thought that I had finished that. I have worked so hard to finish this thing, and I find out that it's not finished.
Yeah, the strange thing is that on some days it feels like I'm back at day one, kind of like 1500 hours earlier than now. And other days it feels like there's nothing I can't do.
Right. The mind is not fixed. It's not steady. That the mind has, sometimes it's sharp, sometimes it's dull, sometimes it's focused, sometimes it's scattered. And part of our investigation is to know what state the mind is in. So we begin to investigate that so that we know what the state of mind that it's in. But we also remember that it doesn't matter what state of mind that it's in, I still don't have to suffer right now.
No.
You don't have to suffer. Just accept that all the mind is dull, but I'm not going to listen to much of anything it has to say.
My goal lately has been more of figuring out, investigating what causes the state of the mind to change.
We may not ever know that. Or if we do, we can do it through insight. But here's this example that we're using of anger is it's better to get a handle on it in the beginning rather than try to figure it all out. But later, as we begin to manage the anger, because we're on top of it, only then do we recognize, all right, the anger is in fact covering up something a little deeper. This is part of the reason why the fetters are listed in the order that they are. That ill will and anger is the fifth fetter. But there are other things to work on deeper than that. So right now, while you're still controlled by the anger, it's not a good idea then to try to look at the source of it or try to figure out something deeper about it. And the reason for that is because you can't do that stuff while you're angry. That anger itself is like the fog of war. we get really, really unable to do much of anything while we're angry. If in a boxing match, if one of the opponents can get the other one angry, then the one who's angry will probably lose. This happens in street balls. It happens in many different kind of contests, even in championship chess. It happens in debates. That's why we don't allow in debating to ad hominem attacks. Because the guy who gets attacked, now he wants to defend himself rather than defend his debate. Okay, so this is the whole point about it is that when anger is there, it's hard to do anything else. So the right thing to do is let's have only one job, and that is to come out of the state of anger. And that we have to have the right attitude to do that. So long as we think that the anger has got us, that I am angry, or I am controlled by the anger, or that the anger is the top dog and I'm the underdog, I'm the victim here, then it's really hard to do. But with that change of attitude, I can do this, I can manage anger, I can take a deep breath, I can feel it. Where is that anger? Is it here? Is it here? Is it in the throat? Is it in my fist? You can feel the anger. It'll be in the body, and we can begin to inspect it and see what it actually is doing right now. In fact, it's very common for people when they're angry for their throat to get tight and to get tense, and the neck. And that, in fact, with that, people can actually give themselves headache. So that they only know the headache. They don't even recognize it. It's coming out of the tension in the neck that spawns through being upset and angry about something.
Mm.
Okay. Why is that true? Why is it the neck? The answer is, look at the way that a lion takes down a gazelle.
Yeah, it's ready to...
It goes right for the neck, exactly. All right. For a wildebeest, the lion will climb on the top of the back of the wildebeest, but his intention is to get to that throat. All right. And that answers also the question: why do male lions have such a thick mane?
Probably to
the neck.
Yeah.
To protect the neck, exactly, because that's how lions are going to attack one another. So the lion who's got the best mane may wind up being the winner of the fight. And so they started to grow these manes. Why? Because this is the protected area. This is our most vulnerable place. Because of that, we tend to protect it, and the way that we do is by tensing it up, making it tight. But there are other places. People will fall off their fist. People will also, in fact, their neck can get so tight that the blood pressure changes to the point that their face turns red. All right? And we can tell somebody you're angry because your eyes are bulging and your face is red. Never mind the way you're talking. I cannot hear you.
Yes, sorry.
Now I can't.
Had a call.
All right. So what I'm pointing to is that anger can be experienced and felt in the body. So that means that when you experience anger, or that you have the thought that anger is coming, or here it is, start to look for the signs of it in the body. Tensions, tightness, things like that. You can actually tell. Why are we wanting to do that? The answer is because we're going to breathe it away. We're going to relax. We're going to find the places where there are tension and let it go intentionally. Why could we do that? Because we're the boss now.
Yeah. Huh.
We've got the right attitude about it. I can handle this. And so this is the way to practice. This is the advice, is to get on top of it by changing your attitude. That you're not the victim of this. This is not a brand new, heavy-duty, super-duper brand new anger. This is the stuff that's always been there. And that you've always been able to manage it before, but now intentionally and with the right attitude, you're going to get even better and better at managing anger. And so the question is, how soon can you catch it? The question is then, in that regard, of how many angry sentences are you going to spout out before you recognize that you're angry? Because mostly what happened is yeah, and then yeah, and then yeah, and then yeah, and then yeah, and that's when we wake up after the fourth or fifth time, okay? So can you bring it down to the point that when you get angry, that's all it is just and that's all you say? That's enough. The recognition of the vocalization of the first note of anger, and then we wake up,
the goal.
and then you shut up. So that's the first thing that we do when we recognize our anger, especially if we've already started it, vocalizing it, is that we shut up immediately. Aha, I caught you, is in fact this part of the shutting up. That's the one's right view. Oh, excuse me, one's right action. One's right action is to shut the mouth. Do not continue spewing the anger.
Oh, that's it's the hardest part.
Okay, so that means you need to practice. But it's hard also only in concept because you haven't been doing it. In other words, you go into the gym and you look at that dumbbell on the floor and you say, wow, that looks really heavy. It would be too hard to lift. And you haven't even tried it yet. So we don't know if it's going to be hard or not.
No, that's true.
In fact, you can become quite pleased when you catch yourself yelling at someone and stop. You just stop it. And that feels really good. Hey, I'm in control of this. I don't have to yell simply because my mouth wants to yell and all of the anger underneath it. That was timely.
Angry dogs.
Right. So I'm not going to worry about that. That sounds like it was an instant everybody woke up. And so that's the way that we want to practice is how soon can you wake up? Can you wake up to the anger before you say something? Are you going to wake up after you said the first thing? Are you going to wake up after you said 3 or 4 things? And the better you get at it, the sooner you'll catch it. And if you're on guard for it, in that attitude of, I can stop this. Then you'll get it down to where you don't say anything. You never show your anger to anyone. You've caught it in time before it gets big enough to actually let it out.
Well, I don't get often angry, so that might be cause some issues with lack of practice because there's so much time between everything something triggers my anger. So when something finally do trigger it, it's forgotten.
Well, that's good. But that's not the way that you spoke about it when you first called. I heard you use being in a box and against the wall and
yeah. It's not that I don't get angry all the time. It's just when I do get angry or some other unwanted, unpleasurable emotion, it gets so much stronger than it used to.
That's the point that I'm making. The reason that it appears stronger and the reason that it appears more frequent is because your sati and your ability to investigate is getting better. And in another way of saying it, you're beginning to see the real dukkha. This is dukkha. Many people can't even see it as dukkha. They can't see it how dissatisfying it is to be angry. But there
Well,
was a
now,
phase that I went through where my anger was righteous. That I was angry because I had a right to be angry. That what I wanted was right and just, and I'm going to get my way with my anger. It's a powerful position to be in. And it took me quite a while to figure out that, oh no, I'm only harming myself.
and
But
others.
whoever I'm being angry with, they're either going to get angry back instead of doing what I want, or they're going to avoid me. But in either case, they're not going to do what I want them to do. But if you want somebody to do something, you got to butter them up. You can't go thrashing out at them. And that's the same way with your boy. If you want him to be quiet, you can't tell him to be quiet. That's not going to do it.
No, absolutely not.
Okay. So as you gain skills in managing your own anger, you'll begin also developing the skills you need to deal with him.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, the sati and being more aware of the anger. And now that I think of it, when I am angry or annoyed or something, is the emotion is kind of in the face of me. I'm very aware of it, but I'm still in the phase of acting from it.
Because you think you are it, that you are the anger. So you
Or
have
that,
to make that
or
disassociation. You are not that anger.
yeah, like, or you say it feels justified, righteous. It that's a very good, very difficult anger state. Righteous anger. This is my right. Is correct. It's I have to display anger now because I want to prove something or
Exactly.
so.
But now you recognize, no, you don't have to behave angry. You can, in fact, get your way easier if you are not righteously angry. You can just be right happily.
Yeah. And it feels like I'm slowly getting to understand it, not just intellectually, but
Right.
on a
I understand. You're
practical way.
practicing. You're deep into practice. I know that. This is not a non-practitioner's dilemma. This is a practitioner dilemma. You're practicing correctly, and I congratulate you for that. All you have to do now is you congratulate you for that now. That you're in charge now. Right. Exactly.
Okay, so I guess that's my next practice goal, to separate myself from strong emotions, to be the boss.
Yes, precisely.
Simply to
I see you, Myra. That pull is yourself. You're disassociated from that now.
exactly.
Then you can become in charge. So long as you're in it, you're of it, it's got you. But when you come out, you separate, and you do that with sati to wake up. Look at what you're doing, and you reckon, oh, no, I am not that anger. The anger is there, but I'm not angry. You practice that.
That seems like a very good practice goal. Right now.
All right. Well, let's finish this now because I've got another caller waiting, and we'll hear back from you. Give me a report about how this worked out.
Yeah, hopefully not. Not in 2 months from now. I'll try to call sooner. It's strange. It's just
you'll be welcome whenever you call, Ronnie. I didn't know it'd been that long.
well, it's a bit strange. It just have felt like, gee, why do I want to call? Because nothing's new and nothing. You're just going to say exactly the same back to me because I feel like I'm on the same place. But I think it's just fooling myself.
Well, you have to hear it often enough so that you know exactly what I'm going to say, and then you don't have to call unless you just want to be friends, which is a good enough reason too.
See you next time.
All righty, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.